So I had this question come up in my mind the other day. Who is messing with your desires? Or who is messing with your passions? Um, Colossians 2 and 13, I believe it is, says, in the King James, it says, God works in us both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Um, the amplified version of that says that God creates and energizes in us the desire and power or ability to do his will. In other words, what it's teaching us is that God creates or produces the desires or passions in us to do whatever he wants us to do. You might say, like, somebody that does missionary work in Africa and goes into villages or just goes into third world countries, you may look at them and say, man, I don't know how they do that. I couldn't go over there and sleep in a tent and all the heat and the atmosphere and things. I just don't know how they do that. And you might say, well, I don't even have a desire to do that. And that doesn't make you bad or wrong because you don't have a desire to do that. See, the reason they can do it and the reason they get joy out of it is because God produced this desire in them to do it. And so that's why they get satisfied from that. And if God wanted you over there, he would create and produce this desire in you to go do that, and you'd be satisfied and happy doing it. But this is what we've got to understand. A lot of times God directs our lives and moves us into our destinies through producing the passion for what he wants in our hearts. See, and a lot of times, and this is what I was thinking about the other day, a lot of times in doing the work of the Lord and going after the Lord, you'll begin to lose passion for things. Your desire will begin to die for certain things. And a lot of times when our passion or our fire begins to die, we just automatically assume that it's the devil doing it. And we try to stick it out and we try to encourage ourselves, and it just seems like it's to no avail because we're just losing that passion. And then we feel like, well, we feel condemned because we're not on fire like we used to. Then the preacher preaches about getting on fire, and we just feel bad because we're not on fire and we're repenting and all this stuff. But here's my point. Don't automatically assume it's the devil messing with your desires, because it's through the desires of your heart, the passions of your heart, God leads you. And sometimes it's not the enemy killing the passion in you. Sometimes it's God changing the passion in your heart and causing you to lose passion for one thing because he is going to stir up passion for something else, because it's time to shift or it's time to change in that season. And you've got to be able to discern when this is God doing this and when the devil's doing it. Now, when the devil's doing it, we've got to resist it, and we got to continue to do what God is telling us to do. But when it's God, it's just sometimes, man, he's doing it to shift us, and we don't need to fight it. We just need to let go of where we're at and move on into what he has for us and know that it's fine. And I think one of the ways that you can tell it's God dealing with your heart is Psalms 37 and verse 4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Now, when it says he will give you the desires of your heart, that word give is not necessarily referring to give like if I gave you something like a gift and I exchanged something from my hands to yours. Okay, that's one term of giving. The give in that verse is referring more to, like, let's say I was a hairstylist and you came in and I gave you a new hairdo, or I gave you a new hair color. Nothing exchanged my hands, or nothing exchanged from my hands to yours. But what that means is I changed your hair. I changed the color of your hair. I changed the style of your hair. And that's what that give means there. It means God will give you the desires of your heart. In other words, he will change, manipulate the desires of your heart, the passions of your heart. It's not necessarily saying he will give you, whatever your heart is desiring. It's saying he will give you the desires of your heart. He will put his desires in your heart. He will change your heart and cause you to desire what he desires, if you delight yourself in the Lord. So to delight ourselves in the Lord, basically, simply put, means that it's my delight to get into the presence of the Lord. It's my delight to communicate with him, to get into his word. And I enjoy getting into his word. And I enjoy getting into his presence. And I enjoy fellowshipping with him. So basically what that's saying when it says, if you delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. That's basically saying, if I will seek after the Lord and get into his word and just delight myself in him, he will begin to change my heart and change the desires of my heart and put his passions in my heart for what he wants. And so, if I'm seeking the Lord and delighting myself in the Lord and spending time with him and going after him, then I can trust the passions of my heart, because I know God is giving me those passions. God is putting those things in there. And so if I'm delighting myself in the Lord and I start to lose passion for something, I don't have to believe that it's the devil doing it. I can trust that God is shifting me, and God is about to give me a desire and a fire for something new. Okay? Now, if I'm not delighting myself in the Lord, I've not been in his word, I've not been meditating on him, and I've not been in his presence, well, then when passions die in that season, a lot of times it's the enemy doing that, because I've opened the door to him and I've allowed him to come in and work and shift my focus and distract me. But if I'm delighting myself in the Lord, I can trust God is dealing with my heart and God's leading me through my heart, and I can trust my heart because God is shaping it and forming it and changing it and directing me through it. So who's messing with your passions? If your passion's dying for something but you've been delighting yourself in the Lord, then God is trying to change directions in your life. He's trying to shift you into something new, and and it's okay to let go of that and look for what else he has for you. Now, if you ain't been delighting yourself in the Lord and your passion's dying, well, then you can't follow your heart. Okay? You got to get yourself back in the presence of the Lord, focused back on God, and then see what God does with your heart and your passions and your desires.